All right, so we are just beyond 6:30, so we're going to go ahead and open the Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, May 19th at 6:31. We'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll start off by saying thank you to everyone for showing up tonight. And we'll get through this together. So I'll go to Angela for a roll call.
Commissioner Wood?
Here.
Commissioner Melcher?
Here.
Commissioner Wolthius?
Here.
Commissioner Parker?
Here.
Commissioner Stevens?
Here.
Commissioner Journey?
Present.
And Commissioner Lohman. Just a reminder to turn on your mics when you get ready to talk.
Okay. So at this portion in our public hearing, this is the time that if anybody wishes to, if anybody has any public comment that they wish to state that is not related to anything on tonight's agenda, this would be the time to do so. All right, moving forward, as far as Planning Commission business, does anybody have anything to do, add, change in regard to our Planning Commission meeting minutes? April 21st and May 5th. Alterations, corrections, changes. If not,
I'll make a motion. We accept both April 21st and May 5th meeting minutes as written.
I'll second that.
all right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. All right, so we'll get in right into tonight's business. All right, we are going to open the public hearing for VR 2201 at 6:34. The applicant is seeking a variance to the city limits on building height, fence height, and the use of barbed wire in a residential low-density R1 zone. The wastewater treatment plant, Building A, and primary digester buildings may reach a building height of greater than 30 feet as per Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.25.070. Construction of combined building requirements of the construction of a retaining wall along the south and west property lines that will exceed the allowable fence height and include the use of barbed wire per Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.08.033E1 A2B. Well, that's a good one. And 17.08.033 D3A. The wastewater treatment plant is a pre-existing public facility in a residential zone. A public facility is allowed in a residential zone via a conditional use. Conditional use CU 2204 was approved by the Planning Commission on April 7th, 2022. The applicable substantive criteria are listed in the staff report. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward the criteria described or other criteria in the plan or land use regulation which the person believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes the appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. That being read, do any of our commissioners have any personal bias in regards to this application?
None.
None. Any conflicts of interest?
No.
Any ex parte information?
None.
All right, so we'll go ahead and go over to Angela for the staff report.
Thank you, Chairman Parker. As Chairman Parker said, the applicant is seeking variance to the limits on the building height, fence height, and the use of barbed wire in a residential low-density zone. The wastewater treatment plant and primary digester buildings may reach a building height greater of 30 feet. Construction of the combined buildings require the construction of a retaining wall along the south and west property lines that will exceed the allowable fence height and include the use of barbed wire. Based on the review of the FEMA flood insurance rate map, panel 41043C0913G, dated September 29th, 2010, the eastern portion of the subject property is in the special flood hazard area. Based on the Sweet Home ArcGIS map, the eastern portion of the subject property is in the AE 100-year floodplain and the AE 100-year floodway. The subject property does not show wetlands or waterways on the properties that are depicted on the Sweet Home Local Wetlands Inventory and the National Wetland Inventory map. The eastern portion of the subject property is in the natural resource zone. Access to the subject property is via a city facilities access off Pleasant Valley Road. Staff has not identified any reason why the applicant's proposed variance would be detrimental to public health or safety. Staff has not identified any goals or policies of the comprehensive plan that would preclude the proposed variance. Staff finds that the proposed variance is the minimum request necessary to make reasonable use of the property. The requested variance is consistent with the purposes of the zone. The applicants are requesting 3 variances: building height, fence height, and the use of barbed wire in the residential low density zone. Staff has not identified any negative impacts resulting from the proposed variance. Staff has not identified any characteristics or features of the variance proposal that would have an adverse impact on property values, livability of the development in the surrounding area, or the natural environment. Staff has not identified a physical circumstance or condition that makes the subject property difficult to develop. As required under this section, if this application is approved, the variance shall be void 1 year after the date of the Planning Commission approval if the use has not been substantially established, as defined under Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.88.060 within that time period. Staff finds the applicant has met the criteria listed above in Section 3. As a result, staff recommends approval of VR 22-02. Staff has not recommended any conditions of approval. The Planning Commission will hold a public hearing at which it may either approve or deny the application. If the application is denied, the action must be based on the applicable review and design criteria. The appeal period, staff recommends that the Planning Commission's decision on this matter be subject to a 12-day appeal period from the date of that decision is mailed. Order: after the Planning Commission makes the decision, staff recommends that the Planning Commission direct staff to prepare an order that is signed by the chairperson of the Planning Commission. The order shall memorialize the decision and provide the official list of conditions, if any, that apply to the approval, if the application is approved. Motion: after opening the public hearing and receiving testimony, the Planning Commission's options include the following. Move to approve application VR 22-01 and thereby permit the variance for tax lots 600, 1100, 1300, 1501, and 1502, located at 1359 Pleasant Valley Road, Sweet Home, Oregon 97386. Identified on Linn County's assessor's map as 13S01E31BB, tax lot 600, 1100, 1300, 1501, and 1502. Adopting the findings of fact listed in Section 3 of the staff report, the setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of the decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize this decision. Number 2, move to deny application VR 22-01 and thereby deny the request for a variance for tax lot 600, 1100, 1300, 1501, and 1502, located at 1359 Pleasant Valley Road, Sweet Home, Oregon 97386. Identified on Linn County's assessor's map as 13S01E31BB, tax lot 600, 1100, 1300, 1501, and 1502. Adopting the following findings of fact, the setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of the decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize this decision. Number 3, move to continue the public hearing to a date and time certain, or number 4, other. Does the commission have any questions for staff?
No questions for staff at this time? All right. Do we happen to have our applicant present?
We do. We have Public Works.
So for the record, after you're seated, if you could just state your name and address for the record.
Trish Rice, Public Works Engineering, 1400 24th Avenue. As stated, we are requesting 3 variances. The first one for the building height is primarily due to our intent to reuse and repurpose as many existing buildings on site. Specifically, we have an aerobic digester tank, which is on the east side of the property near Ames Creek. And we intend to increase the capacity of that to help our processes by making it taller. We can't really make it wider because then we would be in danger of encroaching into the floodplain and the floodway. The fence height request is due to the stepped nature of the retaining wall along the property. Diagram C-107 shows the preliminary plan for the retaining wall and the fence. And due to the staggered nature, there will be sections that exceed the standard fence height. And the barbed wire is a request to help with city security. We have had incidences of people breaking into city facilities, stealing metal, tools, batteries, including at the wastewater site. And it would also help keep it consistent with other existing city facilities. So, are there any questions?
I just have a question about security. So there are no like state mandated security guidelines for a facility like yours? It's pretty much dependent on what the city comes up with.
To my knowledge, yes.
Mm.
For the drinking water system, there are
okay.
more requirements.
Thank you.
Any other questions for our applicant? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So at this time, we would invite any proponent testimony, those wishing to speak in favor of the application. All right, any opponent testimony, those wishing to speak in opposition to the application. Any neutral testimony, those wishing to speak not for or against, just wishing to be heard. All right, so at 6:44, we'll close the public hearing for VR 2201 for discussion amongst the commission. Anybody have any issues? No, I understand too with the step wall, just topography and the law of averages.
And the location next to the boat ramp, I'm sure during the summer and fishing season, there gets a lot of traffic through there. And I think it's probably important that the city, for
Yeah.
liability purposes,
Don't want anybody falling,
Right.
falling into a digester tank.
yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
well, and right along the railroad tracks, I mean, there's a lot of foot traffic that shouldn't be there, that's always going to be there.
Yeah.
So. All right,
I'm sure that this has been designed and planned by people with great capability.
Henry, can you turn your mic on?
I just said, I'm sure that this has been designed and planned by people with great capability. Certainly above our job description.
I would agree. So if nobody has any questions for staff or further discussion, I'd look for a motion.
I make a motion to approve application VR 22-01 and thereby permit the variance for tax lots 600, 1100, 1300, 1501, and 1502 located at 1359 Pleasant Valley Road, Sweet Home, Oregon, 97386, identified on the Lynn County Assessor's map as 13S01E 31BB, tax lots 600, 1100, 1300, 1501, and 1502, adopting the findings of fact listed in section 3 of the staff report, and setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of the decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize this decision.
I second it.
Here we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Application approved.
Testing, testing.
Testing, testing.
I think it was just That's because it was too low, the far one.
Maybe.
We've been having trouble with the mics, so sometimes the buzzing. If it gets too bad, I'll just swap out whichever mic is bigger.
Okay. All right, so we'll be moving on to application VR 2202. We'll open the public hearing at 6:47. The applicants are seeking a variance to allow for a depth ratio that exceeds 2.5 times the
Chairman
width.
Parker,
Oh,
sorry to interrupt you. Can we open the variance and the subdivision applications at the same time?
Absolutely.
And then we can vote on them separately, if that works for you guys. It's the same project, and it just helps if we can just talk through it all at the same time with our applicant, and if that's
Okay.
all right with the commission.
Yeah, do you want us to read both at the same time, or do you want to do that together?
I can read the whole thing. You can just open them.
All right, I'll do that. That way we get everything exactly. All right, so we are going to open the public hearing. Let me get sure I get my numbers right. For VR 2202 and SD 2202 simultaneously. We'll open the public hearing at 6:48. And I'm going to go ahead and hand it to Angela for the reading of that.
Bear with me.
Go for it.
I'm just doing it too.
Do we need to
We're gonna mic
disclose?
swap tonight.
We will.
All right.
So I'm going to have you read it in, and then we will disclose after. Or do you want us to
You can
disclose
disclose
now?
and then I can.
All right, thank you, Jamie. All right, so I'll read a little bit. The applicant, blah, blah. Rewind. The applicable substantive criteria are listed in the staff report. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward the criteria described or other criteria in the plan or land use regulation which the person believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes the appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Do any of our commissioners have any personal bias in regard to either of these applications?
No,
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 No. Any conflicts of interest?
no,
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 I have none. Any ex parte information?
no.
none.
no.
No. All right, Angela, over to you.
The applicants are seeking a variance to allow for a depth ratio that exceeds 2.5 times the width of the proposed partition P22-05, which is in your packet. It is an administrative decision, but we put it in there for reference purposes for you to review. A frontage of less than 25 feet and setback requirements of less than R1 standards. The variance is necessary because the subject code provision does not account for special or unique physical circumstances of the subject site, existing development patterns, or adjacent land uses. A legal lot determination may be sufficient evidence of a hardship for purposes of approving a variance. Per Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.88.0408. The applicants are proposing to partition tax lot 3700. Once partitioned, the applicant is proposing for property line adjustments to combine the northern portion of the proposed partition with tax lot 2600 and the southern portion of the proposed partition with tax lot 3800, eliminating tax lot 3700. The property is in the residential low density R1 zone. Application P22-05 is pending the approval of application BR 22-02. Application BR 22-02 is being filed simultaneously with applications P22-05, PLA 22-05, PLA 22-06, and SD 22-02. If the commissioners don't oppose, I'll just go through all of the variants and then I'll switch over to the subdivision if that works.
That works.
That's good.
Based on the review of the FEMA flood insurance rate map panel 41043C0914G dated September 29th, 2010, the subject properties are not in the special flood hazard area. The subject property does not show wetlands or waterways on the property that are depicted on the Sweet Home Local Wetlands Inventory and the National Wetlands Inventory map. Proposed parcels A and B have access from 45th Avenue. The proposed parcels have access to city water and sewer services. The applicants are seeking a variance to allow for a depth ratio that exceeds 2.5 times the width of the proposed partition P22-05, a frontage of less than 25 feet, and setback requirements less than R1 standards. The subject property is co-owned, an undivided 1/2 interest by each of the applicants. The applicants are proposing to partition tax lot 3700. Once partitioned, the applicants are proposing to submit property line adjustment applications to combine the northern portion of the proposed partition with tax lot 2600 and the southern portion of the proposed partition with tax lot 3800, eliminating tax lot 3700. The variance is necessary because the subject code provision does not account for special or unique physical circumstances of the subject site, existing development patterns, or adjacent land uses. A legal lot determination may be sufficient evidence of a hardship for purposes of approving a variance, per Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.88.040A. Staff has not identified any reasons why the applicant's proposed variance would be detrimental to public health or safety. Staff has not identified any goals or policies of the comprehensive plan that would preclude the proposed variance. Staff finds that the proposed variance is the minimum request necessary to make reasonable use of the property. The applicants are not requesting more than one variance. Staff has not identified any negative impacts resulting from the proposed variance. Staff has not identified any characteristics or features of the variance proposal that would have an adverse impact on property values, livability of the development in the surrounding area, or the natural environment. The length, width, and joint ownership of the subject property make it difficult to develop. Staff finds that the variance will allow the owners of the subject property to partition the property and then complete property line adjustments to eliminate tax lot 3700. As required under this section, if the application is approved, the variance shall be void for 1 year after the date of commission approval, if the use has not been substantially established as defined under Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.88.060 within that time period. Staff finds the applicant has met the criteria listed above in Section 3. As a result, staff recommends approval of BR 22-02. Staff has not recommended any conditions of approval. The Planning Commission will hold a public hearing at which it may either approve or deny the application. If the application is denied, the action must be based on the applicable review and design criteria. Appeal period. Staff recommends the Planning Commission's decision on this matter be subject to a 12-day appeal period from the date of the decision is mailed. Order. After the Planning Commission makes a decision, staff recommends that the Planning Commission direct staff to prepare an order that is signed by the chairperson of the Planning Commission. The order shall memorialize the decision and provide the official list of conditions, if any, that apply to the approval if the application is approved. Motion. After opening the public hearing and receiving testimony, the Planning Commission's options include the following. 1, move to approve application VR 22-02 and thereby permit the variance for tax lot 3700 located in Sweet Home, Oregon 97386, identified on the Lynn County Assessor's Map as 13S01E33AC, tax lot 3700. Adopting the findings of fact listed in Section 3 of the staff report, the setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of the decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize this decision. Move to deny application VR 22-02 and thereby deny the request for a variance for tax lot 3700 located in Sweet Home, Oregon 97386, identified in Lynn County Assessor's Map as 13S01E33AC, tax lot 3700, adopting the findings of fact, the setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of the decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize this decision. 3, move to continue the public hearing to a date and time certain, or 4, other. I'll move on to the subdivision. Maybe. All right. Included in your packets, you should have found some additional photos that were submitted by Marilyn Nicholson on May 17, 2022. So it was after the time I sent out the packets, but before the meeting time. So I just want to make you aware that they were sitting there. So SD 22-02, the applicant is requesting to subdivide an approximately 193,625 square foot property into 18 lots. The subject property is to the west of 45th Avenue and is identified by 1070 45th Avenue in Lynn County Tax Assessor's Map 13S01E33AC, tax lot 2600. Lots would range in size from 8,000 square feet to 11,697 square feet. All lots would be eligible to be developed with single-family dwellings per Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.24.020A. The subject property is in the residential low-density R1 zone. Application SD 22-02 is pending the approval of applications P22-05, VR 22-02, PL 22-05, and PLA 22-06. Applications SD 22-02, P22-05, VR 22-02, PLA 22-05 and PLA 22-06 are being filed simultaneously. The application under consideration is a proposed tentative subdivision plat for an 18-lot residential subdivision with concurrent partition, variance, property line adjustment approval to allow for the subdivision to be built to Sweet Home Municipal Code criteria. The subject property is to the northwest of the 45th Avenue and Kalmaya Street intersection and is identified as 1070 45th Avenue and Lynn County Tax Assessor's Map Number 13S01E 33AC Tax Lot 2600. The subdivision is approximately 4.31 acres and improved with an existing single-family residential dwelling, which will be demolished with the proposed development. Based on the review of the FEMA flood insurance rate map, panel 41043C0914G, dated September 29, 2010, the subject property is not in the special flood hazard area. Based on the review of the City Sweet Home local wetlands inventory and a review of the National Wetlands Inventory map, the subject property does not contain inventoried wetlands. The subject property has frontage and access along 45th Avenue. The applicant is proposing to create a local street within the subdivision, which is in attachment B. The city water services are available on 45th Avenue. City sewer services are available on 45th Avenue and along the southern border of the subject property. Sweet Home Municipal Code 16.16.025 provide a specific list of requirements for the application, and the applicant provided this information. Based on the review of the applicant's site plans, lot depth would not exceed 2.5 times the average width. There is a portion of each lot where the lot width would be at least 80 feet in width for single-family dwellings. No lot would be dimensioned to contain part of an existing or proposed street. In Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.60.040, the minimum lot width for a single-family dwelling is 80 feet. Based on the review of the applicant's site plan, the lot depth shall not exceed 2.5 times the average width. Based on the review of the applicant's site plans, the proposed lots would have at least 25 feet of frontage along a public road. The applicant has proposed an easement for franchise utilities and drainage and joint use driveways on the proposed flag lots. The applicant has not proposed a through lot with the modification. As depicted, the proposed parcels would have sidelines that are at or very close to right angles to the public road. The applicant has proposed 6 flag lots, proposed lot 7, lot 9, lot 11, lot 13, lot 15, and lot 17. Staff finds that the flag lots are the minimum necessary for the applicant to use as access from the identified lots to the local street. The applicant has not proposed any special setbacks. Staff finds that the configuration of the proposed subdivision lots meet Sweet Home Municipal Code 16.12.030J criteria. The applicant is proposing to create 18 residential lots. As reviewed in the staff report, the lot would meet the minimum lot size of the zone and would be configured so that they could accommodate a residential dwelling. Staff finds the applicant does not own any other property adjacent to the site. Staff has not identified any feature of this proposed subdivision that would inhibit development on adjoining property. Per the staff engineer's comments in section 2, the frontage along 45th Avenue has been recently paved, leaving rock shoulders. The frontage will be developed to city standards with roadway and pedestrian facilities. The drainage ditch on the west side of 45th Avenue may be piped or left open channel with a sidewalk assembly between it and the right-of-way lines of the property. The indicated 45-foot of right-of-way for the street system appears wide enough for the required subdivision elements of curbs, planters, sidewalks, etc. Per the Public Works comments in section 2, the city paved 45th Avenue in the fall. The city paved 45th Avenue in the fall of 2021. Therefore, the street cuts for utilities into the subdivision shall be ground down across the full width of 45th Avenue and repaved in a single piece to maintain as best as practical the integrity of the new pavement. Street cuts shall be located as close together as practical to minimize disturbance to 45th Avenue. Per the staff engineer's comments in section 2, the adjacent street of 45th Avenue has full city utilities. There is an 8-inch water line and an 8-inch sewer line in 45th Avenue that can be connected to. Water connection would be a cut in T with full valving and an 8-inch line in the cul-de-sac. A sewer connection would be with a manhole and an 8-inch line in the cul-de-sac. The roadside drainage ditch in 45th Avenue is available also for the stormwater runoff. The proposed subdivision has a perimeter storm drain easement to collect rear yard drainages. Impervious surface runoff will be contained in the cul-de-sac street. Both will be detained with storage and flow controls with outlets to 45th Avenue. The drainage area on the north lot is wider than other segments to accommodate the runoff capture and the storage requirements. Per the Public Works comments in section 2, there is an existing city sewer main along the south property line. Long-term Public Works finds that it is an excessive amount of infrastructure maintained for the service area. Therefore, we require that all subdivision lots connect to the new sewer main in the new cul-de-sac. and any existing connection to the main on the south side be disconnected. This will leave only one house outside of the subdivision still served by the sewer main, and at such time in the future that the adjacent properties to the south are subdivided, that last service can be rerouted and the redundant sewer main can be abandoned. Based on the review of the FEMA flood insurance rate map panel 41043C0194G dated September 29, 2010, the subject property is not in the special flood hazard area. Based on the review of the city Sweet Home local wetland inventory and a review of the national wetland inventory, the Sweet Home property does not contain inventoried wetlands. The applicant is not proposing to phase the proposed subdivision. The city has not been informed by the Sweet Home School District that their adopted school facility plan has identified a lack of school capacity. Staff does not recommend that this application be denied based on the school capacity. To ensure compliance, staff recommends a condition of approval that upon development of the proposed parcels, the property owner shall construct all applicable street, sidewalk, and storm drain improvements that are required and according to the provisions of the Sweet Home Municipal Code at the time of development. All public improvements must comply with the standards listed in Sweet Home Municipal Code at the time of development. Staff has recommended conditions of approval listed in section 4 below that act to ensure that the final subdivision plat comply with the application that has been proposed. Additional conditions of approval may be required if any of the subject parcels are further divided under a future application or if they are physically developed with the residents. The approval shall be valid for 12 months. The applicant has not proposed a phased development. Extension shall be permitted as allowed under Sweet Home Municipal Code 1616-080. With the above conditions, the application complies with these criteria. Within 1 year of the date of the approval of the tentative plan, the applicant shall prepare a final plat in conformance with the approved tentative plan. The provisions of this title and the provisions of ORS Chapter 92, the applicant shall submit a final subdivision plat for approval by the city according to the procedures and requirements of Sweet Home Municipal Code 16.20. The applicant shall provide all information required by Sweet Home Municipal Code 16.20. Based on the findings discussed in section 3 above, staff recommends that this application be approved. The application shall be subject to compliance with the conditions listed below as required by the findings of fact presented in the review criteria in section 3 above. Any modifications to the conditions listed below would require approval in accordance with the provisions of law. For example, a variance, subsequent land use application, etc. If the Planning Commission approves this application, staff recommends that the conditions of approval listed below be required in order to ensure that the application is consistent with the findings in the review and design criteria in section 3 and as required by the Sweet Home Municipal Code and other provisions of law. Appeals to the land use board of appeals, thank you, may only be based on review and design decision criteria listed above. Recommended conditions if the application is approved. 1, the final configuration of the proposed lot shall substantially conform to the plot plan reviewed in this application. In attachment B, the final configuration to subdivide an approximately 193,625 square foot property into 18 lots. The subject property is to the west of 45th Avenue and is identified by 1070 45th Avenue and Lynn County Tax Assessor's map number 13S01E33AC, tax lot 2600. Lot sizes would range in size from 8,000 square feet to 11,697 square feet. All lots would be eligible to be developed with single family dwellings per Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.24.020A. The subject property is in the residential low density R1 zone. Number 2, the applicant shall ground down the street cuts for utilities across the full width of 45th Avenue and repave it with a single piece to maintain the integrity of the new pavement. Street cuts shall be located as close together as practical to minimize disturbance to 45th Avenue. Number 3, the city shall require the applicant to connect all subdivision lots to the new sewer main in the new cul-de-sac and any existing connections to the main to the south be disconnected. Number 4, Sweet Home Municipal Code 16.12.040 water system. The design shall be to city standards and shall be approved by the city engineer. The design shall take into account provisions for extension beyond the subject property. The design shall adequately loop the city system. Number 5, 16.12.05045 sanitary sewer system. The design shall be to city standards and shall be approved by the city engineer. The design shall take into account capacity and grade to allow for desirable extension beyond the subject property. Number 6, upon development of the proposed parcels, the property owner shall construct all applicable street, sidewalk, and storm drain improvements that are required by and according to the provisions of the Sweet Home Municipal Code at the time of development. All public improvements must comply with the standards listed in Sweet Home Municipal Code at the time of development. There's a correction to number 7. It does say recreation commercial. It should be residential low density. So the new property lines shall be situated so that all buildings and structures comply with the yard setback requirements of the residential low density R1 zone. I have noted that in my notes here. Number 8, improvements within the subdivision shall be installed at the expense of the subdivider as required by Sweet Home Municipal Code 16.24.050. Improvements shall be made under the procedures and specifications listed in Sweet Home Municipal Code Chapter 16.24. Number 9, within 1 year of the date of the approval of the tentative plan, the applicant shall prepare a final plan in conformance with the approved tentative plan, the provisions of this title, and the provisions of ORS Chapter 92. The applicant shall submit a final subdivision plat for approval by the city according to the procedures and requirements of Sweet Home Municipal Code 16.20. The applicant shall provide all information required by Sweet Home Municipal Code 16.20. Number 10, the applicant shall obtain all applicable development permits, which include but are not limited to public works permits, development permits, including building permits and erosion control permits. The applicant shall obtain a 1200C stormwater permit from the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality and Department of State Lands permits as applicable. In taking action on a subdivision, the Planning Commission will hold a public hearing at which it may either approve or deny the application. The decision on the application must be based on the applicable review and design criteria. If approved, the Planning Commission may impose conditions of approval. Staff recommended conditions are included in Section 4. Appeal period, the staff recommends that the Planning Commission's decision on this matter be subject to a 12-day appeal period from the date that the notice of decision is mailed. Order, after the Planning Commission makes the decision, staff recommends that the Planning Commission direct staff to prepare an order that is signed by the chairperson of the Planning Commission. The order would memorialize the decision and provide an official list of conditions, if any, that apply to the approval, if the application is approved. Motion, after opening the public hearing and receiving testimony, the Planning Commission's option include the following. 1, move to approve application SD 22-02, including the conditions of approval listed in Section 4 of the staff report, adopting the findings of fact listed in Section 3 of the staff report, the setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize this decision. 2, move to deny application SD 22-02, including adopting the findings, the setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of the decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize this decision. 3, move to continue the public hearing to a date and time certain, or 4, other. So as stated, there's multiple applications that have to be approved technically for this one to come into play. However, the partition and the property line adjustments are all administrative decisions. So you have copies of those in there, but those, you will not be deciding on those. You'll be deciding on the variance and the subdivision, and these will, once the variance is, if the variance is approved, then we will move forward with the partition and property line adjustments, which then will move the subdivision forward. I know it's a lot of applications that go into making this, but it has to be divided, combined, and then the subdivision. So if you have any questions, let us know.
You said that 45th Avenue was paved recently.
Yes.
What width is that, and what standard? Was that sidewalk, curb, and gutter?
It's a rural style roadway out there. There's no curb and the sidewalk. It's the what they did was overlay with 2 to 3 inches of standard asphalt, or level 2 they call it, over the existing roadbed of an oil mat surface that was put on in the late 90s. It helps to provide a base, but it was put in perhaps just a few weeks to a month ago.
Okay.
And 45th, 6th, and 7th and the Kalmaya Street got paving out there
Okay.
as part of that project.
Are there ditches that run along that?
Yes, on both
Okay.
sides of the street,
Okay.
flowing towards Long Street,
Okay.
which is the main channel.
Right. Okay.
I guess I had one for you too, Joe. So there's no moratorium on cutting that asphalt.
No, other than, no, there is no moratorium on cutting asphalt. You just have to repair it well.
Is there a time associated with the from cut to repair?
The The practical situation is that oftentimes the cuts will be open for a few weeks, perhaps to a month, but they have to maintain a smooth surface. Some are better than others, but the subdivision will not be approved for any final condition or final occupancy without it being paved. And most of the time that gets paved long before we get to the end of the project. But it does stay open for at least a few weeks during the construction of the major infrastructure.
So to piggyback on Commissioner Melcher's comment, on 45th, when it was paved, it shows a 50-foot right of way. Do you know how wide the actual hard surface is that was put down?
Unfortunately, I did not go out and measure that. It was constructed and built through the Public Works division. And however, I do remember that it is quite narrow, probably on the order of 14 to 15 feet of the old oil mat surface. I'm being probably a little generous at that. And whenever in the past we've overlaid those kinds of streets, we widen that. However, the available width, because there's a roadside ditch on either side, limits that. So it would be at least what it was, and preferably a little wider. But no, the short answer to the question is I have not taken a tape measure to it.
Okay. Anybody have any continuing questions for staff?
So is that paved area, can 2 cars pass on that? Each other?
I'll admit that
going
it's
opposite directions? Is there
Yeah.
a place where they could pull out and let a car go by?
the minimum standard that we have for that kind of thing is a local street width that has a 7-foot travel lane in each direction. In most cases, a standard and bare minimum is 8 feet. So because that was a pre-existing roadway width, even though the right-of-way to right-of-way is 50 feet wide, it's limited in how wide it can be because of the shoulder width, the ditch widths, and the fact that we inherited it during the annexation. So it is probably, I did drive it a few weeks ago, and I believe that you could, one needs to be careful, pass 2 vehicles side by side. It needs to be at least a minimum of 14 feet wide for a 1-lane passage for emergency vehicles, that type of thing. But like I said, I have not taken an absolute measurement on that,
If I
but
could,
should be able to.
if I could interrupt you, Joe.
Sure.
So on the screen, you can see an aerial view. This is prior to the paving that was done last month. But based on the visual, the actual right of way is 50 feet. You can see here, if you see the cursor, you may not be able to see that. This travel surface is about half of the distance, might be a little bit less. So I'd say there's at least 20 feet width on this travel area at this location. Could be as much as 25, but probably not anything more than that.
And as part of conditions of approval, sidewalks, curb and gutter installed on 45th.
Yes, to the best of the ability in a rural environment, there needs to be the pedestrian access way and a vehicle access way, and provision for stormwater management and conveyance. In this particular case, the sidewalks are on the opposite side of the ditch, up against the property line, so that in a cross section you have a travel lane, the shoulder, and then the ditch and then the sidewalk path being on the level ground. That channel has quite a bit of water, and it would take it's a pretty good sized ditch along that side right there. But the subdivision standards are pretty flexible in that regard.
Anybody else have any questions for staff? No. Okay, so at this time, we'll go ahead and invite our applicant forward. And once you're seated, if you could state your name and address for the record. I'll take this opportunity to, if you guys are planning on speaking tonight, we have a sign-in sheet in the back. Please make sure that your name and address, contact information is on that sheet if you're going to speak.
Chair Parker, if I may.
Yes.
Also, if you want to speak and someone has already said what you are going to say, we just ask you for the sake of time to say, I agree with so-and-so, rather than repeat the same thing over again.
Yeah, that way we'll allow enough time for everyone to have an opportunity to speak.
Is this on?
Yep, you are on.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening. My name's Lyle Hutchins. I'm representing Cordell Construction LLC, the applicants for the subdivision application, and one half of the applicants on the variance request. First of all, I'd like to give our thanks to city staff for their guidance and diligence as these applications came together, and for the thorough overview of the applications this evening. As Angela has already stated, the subdivision application is for an 18-lot, low-density residential subdivision. I will try to provide just a little bit of supplemental information and not reiterate all of the information which Angela has presented this evening and which you have read in the application materials. The handout graphic is an enlarged and hopefully a clearer view of the exhibit C1 that's already in the application materials there. So just provided that as being at a little larger scale. The subdivision lot layout, including the flag lots proposed, allow for an efficient use of the property, meet comprehensive plan density goals, and the layout as a whole minimizes the public infrastructure required to serve the development. The minimum area of any proposed flag lot less the pole portion of the lot exceeds 9,200 square feet, well above the 8,000 square foot lot minimum for the R1 zone. All other lot dimensional criteria are met. It's all stuck together here. For both applications, the variance request VR 2202 and the subdivision application SD 2202, we are in agreement with the findings and proposed conditions of approval in the staff report and ask for your approval of these applications. And with that, I'll stop and try to answer any questions if I may.
All right, well, I'm going to throw one out that's going to come up. Parking. Where?
The street width is sufficiently wide at 28 feet to allow parking on one side. Actually, in a residential district, it can be parking on both sides, recognizing that the driveway approaches will start to break up that on-street parking. All of the residential units Land Development Code requires setbacks to the garages so that there are at least 2 parking spaces on site, as well as what may be in the garages themselves.
Will the street abutting lots of the flags, I'm sorry, the lots that are in front of the flag lots, the street abutting, where will their driveways be? Will they be in addition to the 2 flags so that?
Yes,
we have
we
4?
anticipate we anticipate the flag lots would have a shared driveway approach, and then the lots with the 80 feet of frontage on the street would each have a separate driveway approach. At this point, we do not know exactly where those driveway approaches will be located for the individual lots, because the plans for those house plans for those lots haven't been prepared yet.
I have a question. Did you consider a configuration that did not include flag lots?
Yes, we did. And 2 things. It would have created a looped street system through the site.
Right.
And essentially that street system would have eaten up a lot of property, created much more public infrastructure that would have to be maintained over time. And we came up with about 16 lots in that configuration.
Right. Yeah, because some of the data that you gave was that without the flag lots, about 0.65 of an acre might be used up in the loop roadway, which is about 15% of the 4.31 acres. And so I don't know how that figures into your calculations for the whole plan, but I just wanted to bring that up as some data. And I appreciate your concern about maintaining public infrastructure, public roads, etc., but we have never been directed by the city or the city council to, or by actually Public Works, to consider whether there's additional burden for them in maintaining a loop road. So I see where it is efficient for your purposes. But there is an issue with flag lots because we do have a code, some code language that talks about that. I know there are a lot of flag lots in town, that notwithstanding. We have always been concerned about that. So I was just curious, what your process was in deciding this was better than that. And so 2 lots less is a consideration.
Sure.
Yeah, typically we see a lot of flag lots as an infill project, but not as something scratch built, brand new.
True.
And I understand that it all comes down to a bottom line and there's a dollar figure associated with it. But I mean, even centralizing the street with a cul-de-sac at the end, losing a few flag lots, obviously the lots become bigger, but you're going to have just a ton of curb cuts on that one side, which basically reduces all parking on street on that side. The 45-foot right-of-way, yet, your right-of-ways and access easements to the back lots is 50 feet. I think things would go a little bit smoother had the right-of-way been 50 feet to match 45th Avenue for some continuity and symmetry going from a side street. And is this street being named, or is it just
Yes, it will be a named public street. That is yet to be determined, though.
And just to piggyback on this really quick, and it's my fault for forgetting to ask this of staff earlier, lot 3700 that's being basically decommissioned and split up, does the city have no access or ownership in a right of way for Kalmaya on that property? No. It is just an odd lot.
We looked into that and it was very odd. Nobody had ever seen that kind of ownership use of a lot before. That lot was somehow created to be the access for these two lots, but instead of having a shared easement or anything like that, they chose to have a separate lot that they each jointly owned. It was never dedicated over to the city, and so it had the appearance of a right-of-way, but was never actually a right-of-way. Certainly, it would be great to extend Kalmaya and use that as part of a loop system. However, that would require the cooperation of the property owner to the south.
And just to piggyback on that.
Which they have not been willing to give. That option was, I believe, brought up with the southern property owner, and they did not want to do it.
Okay.
Did you calculate how many on-street parking places there will be? Since there's so many driveways here and everything, how much is left?
Not a number, no, because again, we don't know at this point exactly where those all the driveway approaches will be located. So to answer your question, no. We went for the 28-foot wide pavement width in order to accommodate some of that on-street parking, but I don't have a specific answer with respect to the number of spaces.
So the lot square footages we have for 11, 13, 15, and 17, are those square footages including the pole of the flag lot? And is that also including the easement that runs on the back edge of the property?
Yes, to both. So the easements will all be private. So those are not public easements. Those will be private easements. The storm drain facilities will be maintained by a homeowners association under those easements, and those easement areas are included in the lot areas. I think, as I stated previously, without the pole portion of the lot, the total minimum area there is 9,200 square feet.
Do you have a number that shows the buildable square footage after omitting the easement portion of each lot?
No, because the easement portion doesn't restrict the building setbacks and things, and at this point, the developer has not selected house plans for each of the lots, so no.
So then also in that statement you made, so you are creating this, there's an HOA being created for this development.
Yes.
What about access to the easement?
That will have to be through each individual lot, but that will be part of the CC&Rs under the Owners Association for maintenance of those facilities.
Do you have any information as far as the storm drain easement itself? Is that for future piping, or is that going to be a swale type retention area along the entire northern edge?
That will be an open swale type detention area along the northern edge. The site slopes do not facilitate piping all of that, and in order to provide any type of stormwater quality, basically an open swale is necessary anyway.
So that is going to be addressing groundwater only, or
Uh,
rain drains are being pushed to the street? I know that's a building question down the road, but
Yep. And I think I can answer that a little bit, is basically the house rain drains will all be collected in the street. The street stormwater then is collected, and all of that is piped north to that swale. In addition, as shown on the grading plans there, we have some perimeter relatively shallow ditches that will collect any surface water that may drain from those lots and prevent it from going on to any of the adjacent property. All of that collected water is then piped to the ditches at 45th Avenue.
anybody else have any questions for our applicant at this time?
I don't.
Questions? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Don't go far, I'm sure we'll be hearing from you
I'd
again.
like to know.
All right. Collect myself right here. So at this time, if we have any proponent testimony, those wishing to speak in favor of these applications, this would be the time to come forward. All right, here we go. Opponent testimony. Testimony from those wishing to speak in opposition of the applications, both applications. And for the record, after you have a seat, if you could state your name and address.
Marilyn Nicholson, 1197 43rd Avenue, Sweet Home, Oregon. I want to go on record that I don't oppose the development, but I would like for the Planning Commission and the permitting agency to explain to the public how increasing profit for the applicant in the way of flag lots specifically qualifies as a hardship for variance approval. And secondly, why would the Planning Commission and permitting agency approve an application that includes conditions that should be avoided, specifically flag lots? Thank you.
Thank you.
So Chairman, can I?
Yes.
So
go
the
ahead.
variance is actually not for the flag lots. The variance is only for that lot 3700.
Lot
That is
3700.
being partitioned. That's
And
the
that
only-
variance allows for the partition and evacuation of
Exactly.
that
It has
lot.
nothing to do with, the variance is not for the subdivision itself. It is only for that partition of that lot 3700. So just
Okay.
to clarify, in case that wasn't clear.
Thank you.
Could I ask you which home you are here?
Can you pop that map up? You're right in the northwest corner.
Okay.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak?
My name is Peggy Austin. I live at 1121 45th Avenue, which is directly across from where the street is going to come out at. Don't have your little map up. Okay. I have a couple questions. I'm a little concerned about, there's only one way in and out of there for 18 homes. And that's a lot of traffic. If there's a natural disaster or some emergency that comes up, they all got to come out one way. So I personally think a loop thing would be better. And I understand that you can't do, this is a private drive over here. I'm also concerned because 45th is a narrow street. And when they repaved it, they made it narrower and it has steep sides. So when we're passing, going one way and the other, if you get too far over to the edge, you're slipping off into that ditch. Especially if you're passing a pickup that has those mirrors out there. And then I'm thinking, these construction vehicles, these big trucks coming up and down that street, they're going to take up even more than those big pickups do. So the additional traffic, you're adding 35 to 40 additional vehicles on that street because every house is going to have at least 2 cars because both parents have to work anymore. That's just the way it is. So that's an additional amount of traffic. The street needs to be a lot wider to compensate for that. And I'm concerned about the runoff. The way it is now, I live on the opposite side, so and we only have runoff in the wintertime when it's raining and stuff. And the other side where the project is, there's water running there all the time. When the rains are heavy, the ditches are full. And if you're going to put open ditches in the project itself, and you're going to have children around, I'm concerned about the safety of the children. With open ditches, I don't like the open ditches the way it is now. So adding all of that runoff that now soaks into the ground onto the ditch on 45th is going to flood everything going down 45th. Unless you have some way to pipe it off somewhere else. So my main concern is the narrowness of the street, the increase in the traffic, the runoff. As far as development, I have no objection to a development, but I think there's some other things that need to be considered before you give any approval.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I just want to let you know really quick. So we are going to be looking at lot sizes, right-of-ways, access, the whole issue with the stormwater runoff. While it is a viable and important issue, that will be done through the building code process where they will have to design the system, submit drawings, and be held to a rigorous standard on those. And any more for swales and retention areas, I know that they are smooth-sided. So as far as safety, but I do understand your concern over the amount of water. So thank you so much.
I have a quick question. I'm sorry. Is the new paving on there as wide as what your street was before, or did it shrink your street a little bit?
It shrunk it down a little bit.
Okay.
And it used to be that the paving went out and it had kind of sloped sides.
Mm-hmm.
But when they dig out the trenches in the fall, they've made the sides steeper. So, and then they narrowed it when they paved it, and they put gravel along the edges. Looks nice, but it's so narrow that.
Are you able to pull out onto the gravel?
No.
Like if a car's coming, can you get off onto the gravel to
Not if
let a car
you don't
go
want to
by?
end up in the ditch.
Okay.
Yeah, shoulder rock is typically fairly soft.
Okay.
Yeah, and a little bit into that gravel and you're going down in the ditch.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Anybody else wish to come forward and speak in regards to the application?
My name's Eve Vineyard. I live at 4309A Long Street. I am an adjacent property owner. So I would actually be right behind the stormage drain. And that concerns me if it's going to be an open thing, as I have very small children. And even if it is going to be sloped, there would be no fence behind me. And so that concerns me because what I call is basically holding ponds that I see around town, as far as what I still call the old airport, because I've lived in the same few blocks for 34 years now. They're not maintained. And so that really concerns me. I have sub pumps under my house, so everything kind of drains from 45th down towards 43rd. I have sub pumps under my house. It's wet. And then everything kind of just drains that way. I've also been told that even if stuff drains and you get it to drain up towards 45th, those ditches are already full once like it rains and a hard rain. Like it's not going to take much to like overfill those ditches. And Long Street gets really full too once it is a hard rain. And so that really concerns me. But I'm extremely concerned with, you know, my small children back there and it being wet under my house. I mean, I have pictures of there being 4.5 inches of standing water. I have a 2-minute video of my husband walking and of the tractor that mowed it last year of there just standing water in the tractor lines. I have pictures of water flowing in that field back there from 45th towards 43rd and then down 43rd, like it would be flowing like down 43rd that way. So all of that really concerns me as far as developing this and then digging water out to develop all of this. There's not going to be anywhere for water to drain, whereas right now it at least kind of sits in there and there is only 4.5 inches of water sitting there. So all of that really concerns me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to come forward? Okay.
Debbie Adams, 1101 45th Avenue. I live on the corner between Kalmaya and 45th. And getting back to those storm drains, it floods in front of my house. The city has tried several times to fix those storm drains, but they still flood. Plus directly across on Kalmaya, it floods there too. And as far as Long Street, I'm going to tell you, I drive Long Street every day. And when I come to 45th, if somebody's coming up 45th and I'm on Long and they're at the stop sign, I wait for them to turn on to Long one way or the other before I can actually turn on to 45th. There is not enough room for 2 cars. And and you can't widen 45th because of those drainage. So that's my concern. Anybody? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'm Joyce Krebs. I live at 4305 Long Street, and I'm in on this side. I don't know your Jordan, you know. So, and we have water in the back all the time. We had new drains put through. I spent a lot of money on drainage to go out to Long Street, and if they build anything in there, it's going to get worse. I don't want them to do that. I don't want to be flooded out. So they're going to have to do a lot with the water, you know, so.
Yeah, and I appreciate your concern, but I do want to remind everybody too that the stormwater runoff, while it is an important issue, and I get it, I've lived in areas that are like this. That is something that will be dealt with on the development.
Okay, so you're going to have another meeting or something then?
That is out of our hands. As planning commission, we look at building code, lot sizes, access easements, and things like that.
If I
that
may,
portion would be the building department.
If I may, so there is a state building code and city additions to that building code that is followed right now by our building official. All of development is inspected to ensure that that building code is being followed. One of the provisions of that code is that any water that lands on that property has to be dealt with on that property. You cannot increase the flow onto neighboring properties. That is part of the development process, and that is part of the building code that they will have to meet.
And if
With
they don't?
well, they won't pass inspection and they won't get an occupancy permit unless there are sufficient
It will
grades.
happen. I know it will. if they
Right.
build.
And so the engineering is the engineering plans will be reviewed by the building official to ensure that that can be handled, the plans initially. And then when actual grading and actual building occurs, those will be inspected also to ensure that they follow the plan and that they can
'Cause
deal
there's
with
it-
the water.
It's just a field. It's an open
Yeah,
field.
yeah.
You know, so.
And those are the codes that we enforce on all new development.
Okay.
Has to meet that
Okay.
standard.
Okay, because,
And
yeah, I just assume they didn't
Our-
build if it's going to do all this.
Understood. And our experience is that typically new development, it's inspected to make sure it follows the standards, and it typically is better than the previous situation because right now there's no storm drain system at all on the property.
No.
When
no,
you
it
put
runs
one
off of
in,
our place.
right, and so actually putting storm drain infrastructure in will actually improve the situation.
Maybe, if it's not open, but if it's open,
It's not a matter of whether it's open, it's whether it's deep enough and whether it can handle the flow of water and shuttle it off.
bang deep.
Well, and that's what the engineers are there for, to make sure that they design it properly.
Okay, anybody else wishing to speak in opposition of the applications? If not, we will move on. This will be the time if any neutral testimony, those wishing to speak not in favor or against, just wishing to be heard. None. So at this time, I'll re-invite our applicant back up to address any issues that he may have heard during discussion. And again, for the record, if you could state your name and address. Oh, you're fine. Go ahead.
Lyle Hutchins. I think just quickly, a couple things to basically piggyback on to what Blair just talked about is the engineering designs that will be submitted with the initial applications for the street work and things will include stormwater calculations and with the sole purpose basically of the detention area, which is highlighted in blue there along the north property line. Basically that serves to detain that water and release it at a rate that matches the rate of natural sheet flow into the 5th Street ditches prior to development. So there will be a control manhole there with a metering device in it that restricts that flow into the 45th Street ditches to basically prehistoric pre-development rates. And I checked our survey information, which is also part of the packet there on the existing conditions. And when our survey was done, which was prior to the overlay, 45th Street was approximately 17 feet wide for travel lanes.
Is that including the ditch?
No,
Excluding the ditch?
excluding the, correct.
Okay.
What they surveyed in as what appeared to be the actual travel lane width.
That was before the overlay.
Before the overlay, yes, sir.
So just to clarify, the restrictive device at the end of the retention area that allows the water to enter the 45th Avenue ditch is there to meter the amount of water collected in the retention area so as not to overwhelm the drainage system on 45th.
Correct.
So it acts as a capacitor.
And it's, you know, it's a certain amount of area regardless. What we are doing is adding impervious surfaces that basically speed up the flow of that water. So the detention area then collects that water and the metering device slows it back down as far as a release rate to match the historical release rates prior to development into the 45th Street ditch.
Is that going to be fenced, that retention ditch?
We would assume so, yes. We happy for that to be a condition of approval. But again, as we have not developed any individual house plans for each lot, have not taken the design that far.
So I have a question. This is kind of a soft, subjective question. So there's clearly a neighborhood in this area, and you're going to be building an additional neighborhood. With the issue of the road coming into the development, did you consider placing that differently so as not to impact the houses on the east side of 45th Avenue? Do you understand my question?
I think so. Is what we really looked at was the potential for connectivity, and given the level of development between this property and 43rd, it did not seem practical that there would ever be a need for connectivity between 45th and 43rd.
Going all the way through is what you're saying.
Correct.
But you did consider that or look at it or whatever?
Yes, we considered that. In essence, with the lots on the on the westerly side there, that will basically be providing buffering between the existing development further to the west and the cul-de-sac. And then that kind of leads me to the cul-de-sac and the question about single exiting, if you will. I think if you would please note in the staff report that the fire department was very happy with the cul-de-sac and the street arrangement there.
Yeah, and that's obviously important. I'm just looking at livability for the people who are already living
Sure.
on the eastern side.
And they're really going to be buffered by the new residential development along the westerly boundary from the cul-de-sac itself.
Right, except for coming in and going out. There potentially could be 36 vehicles a day going in and out of the development road at
to the east, yes.
Right.
And speaking on the fire department's approval of this, their main concern is just the radius of it, that they can turn their apparatus around. So not necessarily design. There are certain designs that are automatically approved. They're just looking for the minimum radius requirement.
Yes, we actually have exceeded that requirement.
Right.
However, if a car was trying to get out on 45th and a fire truck was trying to get in, fire truck wouldn't be able to get in.
At the 28-foot road width, yes, they would.
On 45th? And we do have 28 feet?
On the new street, yes.
Not on 45th.
On 45th.
Not on 45th itself, no.
Okay.
Would you be opposed at coming back to us with another design on this with an increased right of way for the street access into the subdivision, matching that of 45th Avenue at 50 feet?
I think we'd rather it be a condition of approval.
Yeah, but then we don't know what that ends up looking like.
I'm just looking, Kalmaya Street and this new proposed street. They're just two public streets that are offset just by a lot width. Is that pretty, I don't know if we have that in Sweet Home. Is that?
Pleasant Valley, First Avenue. It's everywhere. It's where they don't line up constantly. And I know we've tried historically to.
But we could potentially line this one up pretty easily.
Well, unfortunately, the
Kalmaya.
property to the north and the property to the south are different owners. And without a proper eminent right of domain request, when there's no through street, would be really difficult.
That was, we suggested using Kalmaya and extending Kalmaya west to create a loop. But again, that was brought up with the property owner to the south, and they are not interested in, it would require them to give up some property to a street. And it would also likely result in houses fronting on that new street, which would be, which they also don't seem to be in favor of. Don't get me wrong, I really wish they would be in favor of it, because I think it would be better for the whole area.
Well, and that's what we're here for, is to kind of future-proof a lot of things. And it would be a bigger deal, I think, if the new proposed street was a through street. But yeah, unfortunately, we have so many of the offset streets. I believe 12th Street that O'Reilly's is on does the same thing. It's literally offset by the width of a street. It's like they use the wrong side of a ruler. So
I'm not sure how you could require anything to be a through street, because there's just not any property that's.
no, the city would have to be something done on the behalf of the developer to create a space that if and when and maybe.
It would require eminent domain, which is not going to be possible. Really.
Not here.
Not practically.
Still, the question comes up though, has that property owner been approached?
Yes.
Okay.
And vehemently against it.
That's right, I recall that. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, you're fine. Clarity is always important.
So many times we make assumptions without ever having contacted somebody and made an offer to buy a lot or resolve it in some other way.
Does anybody else have any questions for our applicant at this time? No? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so at the time, we are going to close the public hearing for our applications and for discussion amongst the planning commission. Close the public hearing at 7:59.
Chairman Parker, can I just,
Yes.
for the minutes, since we did both applications together, per my notes, all of the opposition was for the subdivision, not for the variance. I just want to clarify that, so in my minutes, I reflect that properly. Is that an agreement? Do you all agree with that?
Correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure so that I'm not putting it on.
Okay, thank you. All right. I just see the subdivision off of the foothills area that we've just done again, right in front of us, except this one does not have a through street. And yeah, while the 45 foot right of way meets requirements, we all know that it doesn't meet needs.
Councilor Journey, will you please turn your microphone
off?
Thank you.
So, I mean, we worked with that developer at the time. He actually came back to us and changed the width of the street for that flow from foothills onto that development, which the fire department was ecstatic about for their apparatus being able to cut through that furthering street. I think with the fact that you're going to have minimal off-street parking available, one would hope that the developers that would come in would work together and mirror image driveways on the lower lots to the south so that they would both be on the same side, which would put the curb cuts next to each other and create a more open feel along the street and allowing for more off-street parking. But we obviously can't
No guarantee.
control that. So the only thing we can do is to make that street a little bit wider in order to help mitigate some of the parking issues.
And then the flag lots are an issue. And
Absolutely.
When we have addressed this in the past with other developers, thinking of your example, they did come back with an alternative configuration.
Yes.
They were willing to work with us on that. So I'm not against the development. I have some questions and concerns about these issues that we brought up, the parking, the flag lots.
Access.
And access, yes.
Yeah.
I'm looking north at the Sidabria subdivision, and that development looks like it's smaller than this property, and it has 19 homes on the inside, north of Sidabria, south of airport.
So that's basically sitting in the northwest corner of the old
Mhm.
airport.
19 homes on that one, and
And
it
it has
has
the
a
T in it.
hammerhead
Yeah.
instead of a cul-de-sac. And that design seems to work well in that neighborhood.
Yeah, the one thing though that neighborhood has that this one does not is the connectivity.
Yes.
Right, they have access. This one's landlocked.
I guess my stance would be flag lots can have their place as a way to work with infill projects, but when it's something that's brand new, and I do know that it is an economic based decision on the developer's part to do these so that, obviously there's more cash flow coming in, and I get that from a business standpoint, but we also have to think about protecting the property values of those around us and kind of protecting the vision of Sweet Home.
Well, and there is language in the code about not fostering flag lots if at all possible.
If you don't have to.
Right. And there's no
this is a matter,
topographical issue.
Right. This is a matter of choice from the developer. And so that is causes me concern to think about it.
I mean, even on the south end of the property on Kalmaya, even a half street improvement along the bottom of that would even set up future development for that big property even south of that. What this is doing is interrupting that potential for future development. Do you see what I'm talking about there?
Yeah.
Even just a half street improvement on Kalmaya to access the subject property, and that would potentially set up development for the abutting property to the south at some point in the future.
Commissioner Melcher, you're referring to the immediately to the south of the development.
Yes.
So again, it on like Google labels that Kalmaya.
Yes.
But it's not actually Kalmaya. It doesn't actually. It's not a public
It's not
right
a
of way.
public street.
So even
No.
if the problem is if they were to do a half street improvement there using their property, it wouldn't be something that the city would be able to accept as public right of way. It would be them building it on their own property and it being their own property and not dedicating it to the city.
Could it be dedicated to the city?
No, it couldn't be because it's not wide enough.
It would have to wait for the future development of the southern property.
When half street improvements are done, the full right of way is still dedicated. It's just the improvements are built on only half of the street, or typically 3/4 of the street. And so if there's a right of way that's not big enough, the city couldn't. It doesn't meet city standards.
The amount of traffic and the narrow aspect of 45th Avenue makes it even harder to accept all these additional flag lots, because it just is a lot of extra, driveways and cars coming in and out of that, small road onto a narrower road. And it will increase the traffic on that section quite a bit for those people who are already traveling and struggling to travel up and down 45th Avenue safely.
So the property does front on 45th Avenue, and so improvements along 45th
Are required.
Are perfectly. I mean, that can certainly be a condition of approval that eastern side of 45th, or the western side of 45th, I should say, that abuts the property would need to be improved. It's the further down 45th that is more of an issue. That's more of an offsite improvement. But some improvements can certainly be required.
Some improvement can lead to more improvement, but at this time we can only handle that section of 45th that directly affects the property in question. So between this property and Long Street, it's still going to remain the way it is.
In all likelihood.
Yeah, I understand the benefit of improving the property on the 45th Avenue side where you go into the development. But again, like you were just saying, there's a gap between the property and Long Street that's going to be unimproved.
Well, the decision sits before us in regards to both the variance and the subdivision approval. Keep in mind that the subdivision approval is based on the subdivision drawing shown in front of us. Yes. Oh, sorry. I thought that was your talking. So we need to make sure that we're voting in favor or against the subdivision application based on the information provided to us in the packet.
Chairman Parker, just to
Yes.
remind you also, we need to separate the voting from the
Correct.
variance to the subdivision.
If you'd like, we could work on the variance right now and get it behind us. Okay, so if anybody has any discussion on VR 2202, the variance that is going to allow them to do a property line adjustment to vacate tax lot 3700. No questions in regards to that. Okay, so look for a motion on that, get that behind us. For VR 22. Sorry, I think I have a ream of paper in front of me.
Should be on page 6. You have the right variance. There's two variances.
Yeah, 2202.
Two.
10. No, that's for
6 from the front of the packet.
I'll make a motion. I move to approve application VR 22-02 and thereby limit the variance or permit, and thereby permit the variance for tax lot 3700 located in Sweet Home, Oregon, 97386, identified on the Lynn County Assessor's map as 13S01E33AC tax lot 3700, adopting the findings of fact listed in section 3 of the staff report and setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of the decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize that this decision.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for VR 2202. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, so variance VR 2202 is behind us, so we will continue with subdivision on the table.
I would like to move to continue the public hearing.
I'll second.
I mean, I'm not making a motion, I'm just expressing my
Yes,
opinion.
you agreed. I personally, in regards to this and the information that we have been given, I would like to see not necessarily a completely different version, but a different version, including a 50-foot right of way to match 45th Avenue. Too many times in our town, the streets get smaller and wider and smaller and wider as we travel through. And it's our job to fix that. So. We could give the applicant time to prepare something that would help mitigate some of these circumstances and situations that are put before us.
You want to address flag lots?
I would hope that the flag lot issue would be addressed in a different version.
It needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
The flag lot and the parking and the road size, I think, are the three things that have come up in our discussion.
And they're all kind of interconnected with
Absolutely.
one another.
Okay.
So.
So Chairman, if you are moving to continue the hearing, may I ask the applicant if 2 weeks or 4 weeks are?
Yes.
Would be 4 weeks? Okay, so we'll do it at the first meeting of July.
Do we have a date that we can end?
It'd be July 7th.
July 7th. Okay.
Unless we did a second meeting.
Oh, wait a minute, that's right.
Today's the 19th. So it would be the second.
I don't know what day it is. So, yes, it could be the
It's
second.
Thursday. It's all I know. It's
Second meeting in
Thursday.
June. Which would be.
It'd be the 23rd, June 23rd. I know, because I know it's
June
June.
2nd is the first meeting, so it'd be June 16th, actually.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
16.
There's
June
five
16th.
Thursdays. So is the
Okay.
16th too soon, or do you want to go? Okay.
Yeah, our associated date would be June 16th.
So we just need a motion to continue it to June 16th.
I would move to continue public hearing SD 22-02 to June 16th.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, meeting is postponed to give the applicant time. Continued. Thank you so much. It's late. Continued to June 16th to allow the applicant more time to address the issues from the commission.
It might not hurt to review once again the concerns that we have for him.
Yeah.
So staff can do that. So just
Okay,
to recap.
you will send off correspondence.
Just to recap, you're concerned about the width of the street. We'd like it to match 45th when it comes to the right-of-way width. And you're concerned about the flag lots configuration that would either eliminate them, preferably, it seems to be your preference. And
Address
address
off-street
off-street
parking issue.
or on, you mean
On-street
on-street
parking.
parking?
Off-streets dealt with
Okay.
in the
Those,
building.
those three things. Does that cover everything?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So this concludes our public portion of the evening. So June 16th, you want to put that on your calendar? We'll be readdressing this issue.
And Chairman, it's already 8:15, and
Yeah.
we've talked about not going beyond 8:30.
Correct.
And so I would I recommend that there's really no other items, no other business to accomplish tonight.
Staff updates
Updates, we've still got plenty of work.
coming our way.
No lack of applications for Angela to work on. And,
I rented a room on my board.
so, I mean, as far as we can tell, things are still moving pretty strong in just about every application we talked about.
All right, I guess with that, we'll go ahead and close the Planning Commission meeting for May 19th at 8:18.